At base, we are all nothing more than humans together. We all want an order in our society that we can depend on. We want a good future for generations to come. We want a way to make a steady, decent living that provides the basics of life and a chance to enjoy them. We want the opportunity to become the best of ourselves. Most of all, perhaps, we want a government that exists for the good of its citizens, that protects rather than oppresses its people, that is an equal partner in the community of nations. To follow Jesus means that we must each do something to redeem our battered, beaten world from the greed that smothers it. Our task is to be obedient all our lives to the will of God for the world, to pursue God's dream of compassion, justice, and peace. Our lives are full of journeys and goals, detours and pitfalls. Have faith, have gumption and moxie and gall and persistence. Have compassion and humility, and a good sense to ask for help when necessary. You may or may not get what you ask for, but you may get more than you had hoped for. As Jesus said, for mortals it is impossible, but for God all things are possible. I am Martha Poole, moderator of PWPSV, and I welcome each of you to our PW Winter Gathering. Let us seek shalom as Presbyterian women work for justice and peace. I now turn the screen over to Susan Immel, Vice Moderator for Justice and Peace and Chair of the Winter Gathering Planning Team, to get things started.
Good morning. It's good to see everyone. And on behalf of the Gathering Planning Group, I'm pleased to welcome you to the gathering whose theme now has been said several times, Seeking Shalom through Justice and Peace. There is a bit of irony having this gathering 3 days after Russia invaded Ukraine, but we persist. Martin Luther King said there can be no justice without peace and no peace without justice. The two are very intertwined. Presbyterian women have a robust history of working for justice and peace. And today you will hear several speakers who focus on areas of PW's justice and peace, including racism, anti-racism, human trafficking, anti-human trafficking, food insecurity, and immigration. And we will take questions after the speakers. We will take questions by chat because there's so many of us that we can't see everybody. So thank you very much for being here. Sorry, we are now going to have devotions from Van Rogers.
Our scripture today is Psalm 139, where David praises God for his providence and his mercies. Verses 1 through 6. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my down sitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain unto it. Verses 23 and 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. I recently saw an article entitled Behind the Scenes at TSA's Lost and Found. TSA employees told of all the things left behind in airports: laptops, phones, glasses, hats, books, false teeth, suitcases, toys. A giant rabbit was one of the unforgettable ones. Shoes, photos, wallets, purses, and a painting of a particular dog. Can you imagine all the airports, all that stuff? The article interviews one TSA employee who said, everything has a story. Wow. And each thing has somebody's story. On some Sundays at Bethany Presbyterian Church, Barbara will ask me if I would like a copy of the devotional book, Our Daily Bread. I say yes, and thank you. This is one of those devotions I enjoyed, written by Cindy Hess Casper. As I drove home after lunch with my best friend, I thanked God out loud for her. She knows me and loves me in spite of the things I don't love about myself. She's one of a small circle of people who accept me as I am, my quirks, my habits, and screw-ups. Still, there are parts of my story I resist sharing, even with her and others that I love. Times where I've clearly not been the hero. Times I've been judgmental or unkind or unloving. But God does know my whole story. He's the one I can freely talk to, even if I'm reluctant to talk to others. The familiar words of Psalm 139 describe the intimacy we enjoy with our sovereign King. He knows us completely. He's familiar with all our ways. He invites us to come with him, with our confusion, our anxious thoughts, and our struggles with temptation. When we are willing to yield completely to him, he reaches out to restore and rewrite the parts of our story that make us sad because we've wandered from him. God knows us better than anyone else ever can, and still, he loves us. When we daily surrender ourselves to him and seek to know him more fully, he can change our story for his glory. He is the author who's continuing to write it. In 2021, I lost two dear friends. I cried a lot. I was so sad, and it still hurts when I think of them and their stories. I've known Clark since childhood. His sister and I were friends. Clark played football for Whitehall Yearling High School, served in the military, and was active in his church. I think Clark and my mom made a deal for him to feed her cats when she could no longer feed them herself. Clark even helped put up some tents for a PW meeting. I call Paulette my Jamaican sister. She is also one of my Presbyterian sisters. Paulette met my parents at Bethany when she first came to the United States from Jamaica. When my mom could no longer get around, Paulette was her accountant and friend. Paulette was a good mother, wife, teacher, grandmother, sister, and friend. As we read obituaries during funerals, we learn the stories of our friends and loved ones. God already knows our story. It was soon after Clark and Paulette went to be with Jesus was when I first heard this song. It gave me peace when I was sad. So as you listen to the artist's story, think of the stories you will hear as we build an inclusive, caring community. We may have been unloving, unkind, and judgmental. And when confusion or anxiety creeps into our hearts and thoughts, be reminded, everyone has a story, and God knows your story. Shalom.
I lift my hands to you, cause you deserve all the glory. When I don't know what to do, you find out we have to show me. Father, credit goes to you. You alone know my story. I lift my hands to you. Lift my hands to you. Like you don't make them tell you no, we are starting. Remember me used to walk for no one job. Then they set the junkyard, so you start one. That's what we see you for a one time. You do that. Them wouldn't mind the boss. Done, you can't give them no chance. I live some life, but you so far. So me not cry out. I lift my hands to you, cause you deserve all the glory. When I don't know what to do, you find out we have to show me. All credit goes to you. Are you alone know the story? So I lift my hands to you. Lift my hands. No make them say you a move for a shooter. Come on, go lick with some of them in a tuna. Now for some of them, I said them a friend, them a tuna. Two flies, let them put your name in the rumors. Them wouldn't mind it, boss. Papa don't give them no chance. In a life without no car. So I'm not cry for. I lift my hands to you. You deserve all the glory. When I don't know what to do, and now we have to show me. All credit goes to you, Father. You alone know the spot. I lift my hands to you. Lift my hands. They don't know what we've been through. Talking about my people. 7 in a 1 bedroom. No go school. Mama still growing good. They don't know what we've been through. Talking about my people. 7 in a 1 bedroom. No go school. Mama still growing good. Growing good. I lift my hands to you, cause you deserve all the glory. When I don't know what to do, you find out we have to show me. Father, credit goes to you. You alone know the story. I lift my hands. I lift my hands to you. I lift my hands to you. You deserve all the glory. When I don't know what to do, all credit goes to you. You know the story. I lift my hands. I lift my hands.
Susan Smith has now gotten on, so let's go back to her presentation, and I'd just like to say a few words before she starts. I learned about Susan through an article in the Columbus Dispatch where it was discussing her Crazy Faith ministry, and which works with people who are unhoused. I'm trying to teach myself to say unhoused rather than homeless. So later that year, I attended the Chautauqua Institution in New York, and Susan gave a talk which was based on the book that we're going to hear about today. And her book, this was before her book was published, but she obviously was working on it. And so I met her then. And I also got a copy of her book Crazy Faith, and I had her sign it. And several of us at Covenant have read that book. So in addition to her work with Crazy Faith, Susan has been involved in the Ohio Poor People's Campaign. She's an activist who gets into what the late John Lewis called good trouble. So welcome, Susan. We're glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I call Covenant my sister family because you have been so supportive of our work with the houseless. Is that the unhoused people? You have been so helpful in helping us to collect the socks. I always share the story that in our work, we do a lot of things for that population, but it's the socks that they appreciate most. And I tell the story about how a couple of Thanksgivings ago, we were walking the streets and we had fixed Thanksgiving dinners because a lot of people in that population will not go to the different places, churches and other venues that are giving out dinners. They won't go in for whatever reason. So we were walking the streets with these dinners that we had prepared. We had set up an assembly line at Broad Street United Methodist Church, and we from 8 in the morning until like 10 at night we had put together these dinners in a bag. So we were tired, but the next day was Thanksgiving and we went out with these bags of dinners and socks. And we found plenty of people who needed both. But the moment that got me, I had just been reading or finishing up the book by on World War I. I'm forgetting his name, Roth something or other. But I was just reading about World War I and trench warfare. And it had given a vivid description of what trench foot is like. I had never really heard of it. And so we were passing out these dinners and socks, and we gave these two people who were connected to a homeless community off of Alum Creek. I mean, they actually live outside, and it's just bad to see that stuff. But anyway, so we gave them the dinner, and they were overdo it. But when we gave them the socks, one of the guys just broke down and sobbed. I mean, he sobbed. Oh my God. And I was just kind of standing there, because when you get that type of reaction, kind of takes the wind out of you. You don't know. And he was almost uncontrollable. And he said, "You don't know how much this means." I'm tearing up even as I remember it, because he said, "You don't know how much this means to me." He said, "We get trench foot." And when he said, "We get trench foot," and I realized that there are people in our midst walking up right next to us, maybe, and we don't know it, and they got trench foot. And we are the wealthiest country in the nation, and we can't handle that. I just broke down, I didn't break down in front of him because I'm trying to be, like the big girl and, trying to do our little ministerial work. But when I got in the car, I broke down and sobbed like a baby. So I just wanted to share that story with you, because you guys are so generous with the socks. As are other people, but your church is so generous, and I just cannot thank you enough. You are making a difference. I'm telling you, wherever we go, no matter what we give them, they take those socks like they're gold bars. So just wanted to thank you and apologize for the mishap and the misunderstanding for the getting into the meeting. At least I'm here now. So thank you for the invitation. We're talking about this book, With Liberty and Justice for Some, the Bible, the Constitution, and Racism in America. And I need to share with you that racism just tires me out. It just tires me out. And in a nation which has what I call two sacred texts, that's what was the inspiration behind this book. We have these two incredible sacred texts, the Holy Bible, the Christian Bible, and the Constitution. And we quote them, we refer to them. People say, "I read the Bible." People act like, I don't know, like there's a spirit or an ethos around both documents, right? And if I were to, I tell the story about how I had this Bible. Oh, I must have had it for 100 years, and it was all falling apart, and I couldn't, I didn't get it rebound or anything. The pages were all falling out, but it was the Bible, and that was the days before iPads and all that kind of stuff. So when you went to preach someplace, you took your Bible, right? And it was so raggedy. Oh my God, it was so raggedy. So I was an associate minister at Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, and I took my little raggedy Bible up to the pulpit, and Jeremiah Wright looked at me because I was flipping through it. This is my Bible, special to me. He said, "Susan, you can get a new one." It was so funny, but my problem was, what would I do with this Bible? I mean, what do? You don't throw away Bibles. You don't, and if you can't fix them, then what do you do with them? They just, I don't know. So it's the sacredness of it. My mother, put that in us, that it was a sacred text, and, all these other things that we learned, you don't question God and all that kind of stuff, but along with all those little, I call them Christianese things that she gave us, also, the Bible is sacred. And so if we were ever to suggest and go into a debate about let's update the Bible. Let's just update it. There would be a war. Let's have a second Council of Nicaea. That thing they had in 325. Yeah, let's do a new one. And let's not govern our lives by what happened, 4,000 years. Let's not do that. Let's do this. Let's have a new Council of Nicaea. Let's call it something else. Let's call it the Council of Minneapolis or something. Let's do something, but let's have a new council so we can make a document that is appropriate and relative and applicable to today. Of course, there would be a war. There'd be a war. Just like if we suggested that that we have a new constitutional convention. What? Everybody talks about how, the founders meant this and the founders meant that. And the bad thing about it is that we can't wake the founders up from their graves and ask them what they meant. We put our 21st century lens on with our 21st century experiences, and we make some determinations about what the founders meant. And we always say, people are always saying that the founders wanted this to be a Christian nation. They did not. They specifically said they did not want this to be a Christian nation. And many of them, most of them grew up going to church. They were Episcopalians and Anglicans and Methodists. But, and they acknowledged that perhaps Jesus lived. They didn't have a problem with that, but they categorically denied or rejected the metaphysical aspects of Jesus' life. So the miracles and all that, they said, no. And they wrote it down that this is not supposed to be a Christian nation. So I was really wrestling with it, because I think if a document is sacred, then the words contained therein should be sacred. And I think if you call yourself a Christian, you should be doing what Jesus says. I know that's like just, otherwise just call yourself a religious person or something. But if you're going to call yourself a Christian, do what Jesus said to do. My name was Susan Simmons before I had to do what Mary Lee Simmons said to do, right? Her thing was, as long as you are in my house, you are going to follow my rules. And we did that. That was what you did. If you were your mama's child, your mama and your daddy's child, you followed what they said, right? And I can remember plenty of times saying, well, so-and-so's mom doesn't let her. She said, well, you don't live in so-and-so's house. You live here. So that's what I grew up with. So I watched, and I've been watching for a long time, how people who call themselves Christians seem to reject, deny, ignore the words that Jesus said to do, the things that Jesus said to do. They just don't do it. And of course, with the Constitution, people cherry pick what they're gonna adhere to and what they're gonna ignore to. So I'm saying something's wrong. Something's wrong. So then I was reading one day, and because I've always been confused about how people who practice hatred racial, sexual, gender, whatever hatred they practice. Like, how can you do that and call yourself a Christian? Well, I read the story about a man named Sam Bowers who said he had a religious, this story fascinates me. He had a religious experience. He, like Paul in the, the biblical Paul, or Saul who became Paul. He was on the, everybody knows the Damascus Road experience. Saul says, God meets him, Jesus meets him and says, Saul, why are you persecuting me? This guy who had been a murderer is now met and has his conversion, and now he loves Jesus. Never met Jesus, but he loves Jesus. But he was a Roman citizen. He was a member of the privileged class. All right, so he, you can be whatever class you are if you want and follow Jesus, but you got to follow Jesus, I think. But anyway, what he said was he had a religious experience like Paul or Saul did. And he said that he heard God tell him that his call was to save white supremacy. And I just said, what? Sometimes when I'm talking about this stuff, I cuss, so I have to remember that I'm in the midst of a group of church ladies. So, excuse me. Sorry. But what are you talking about? Whose God would tell you to be, to say white supremacy? But that's what he went on. And he became a rabid segregationist. He became the founder of a Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan and the founder of another very racist organization. And what he would do was he wanted all of his people to know the Bible. And he, before they would go out to terrorize, to murder people, primarily Black people back then, but he'd call them together. They'd have Bible studies. They had Bible studies. Every time I think about it, it just blows me away. They had Bible studies. And before they would, hit the road to do what they believed God was telling them to do, he would have them fast and pray. And it just made me sick to my stomach. Because this group of people who I think they're soaked in their racial hatred. They're soaked in it. It's all in their pores. It's like an addiction. I'm writing something now for publication, and I'm saying that white supremacists have been soaked in their hatred, and it's become an addiction. When you have an addiction, you can't just say, if you're addicted to alcohol or to drugs or anything, you can't just say, today's Saturday, okay, I'm going to quit and be done with it. It has to work its way out of your system. You have to go to detox, right? You have to do something to get that stuff out of your system. In America, the people who are immersed in white supremacy and those who have been complicit and being quiet about it need to be detoxed to get it out of our system. But anyway, he would take these people out after they fasted and prayed, and then they would go kill somebody. And the image that I had in my mind, actually, that made me actually sit down and start writing, is that these people had the audacity to do that, to fast and pray and do it in the name of Christ. They don't say Jesus, they say Christ. And there's a reason for that. They would do this in the name of Christ. And they go out and kill people, string them up, lynch them, and then go to church the next day, put on their Sunday suits, go to church, pray, sing. Some would give communion. And it pissed me off. That's as much of a cuss out as but I have to get that out. I mean, it really pissed me off. But it also made me understand, or made me want to understand, how deep is the spiritual decay that is a trademark of this white supremacist mindset. I think that people who call themselves Christian, and it's a theology. It really is not a theology. It's an ideology, and they put the name of the Christ on top of it to give it some validity, I guess. But it's not, in my view, any deity pushes for us to be in community with each other, right? A deity pushes community and not chaos and division. And that ideology pushes division. And actually America has taught the whole world how to relate to people of color, has taught the whole world. One of the most profound statements I heard maybe a month ago is that in Africa, there are no Black people. There are no Black people. There's just people. It's here in this country and then around the world where the color of our skin has been used to mark us, like we're walking around with the scarlet letter or the brown letter, let's call it the brown letter, that marks us. And the so-called theological, which is really an ideological justification, is taken from the Bible. And so that's why I started writing this book. And the more I read and study, the more I know I need to read and study more and write more. And you know what I want to do? I'm not a scholar. I don't write, you know, you can tell I'm not a scholar. I don't write in scholarly. I can't do that. I want to write in a way that people will be able to read it and relate to it and maybe be inspired to do some of their own research themselves, because I really believe that people know better if they do better, or do better if they know better. And if we were to know more about how we got here and what was the role of the church and what was the role of the Constitution, then if we understood it, then maybe we would be more equipped to look even inside of ourselves to see where we are, and then to look at our society and our culture in general. So I went to, just for today, how many minutes do I have left, Susan? Like 10? You're muted.
Maybe 8.
Okay, good. I can do that, Nate. All right. So I just wanted to read a couple of things from the book and the chapter that's called "The Church Impotent." There's a quote I put in here by Stephen Douglas in 1858. He said, "I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and Black races. I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. I will say, in addition to this, that there is a physical difference between the white and the Black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together in terms of social and political equality, and in so much as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior, and I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race." Okay. And then there's a minister, a pastor, Richard Furman, who wrote in 1822, because he said, he made an address, and in that address, he didn't mention Jesus, a stark contrast to the way enslaved Africans would say the name Jesus. You know, Jesus is on the main line. What a friend we have in Jesus, you know. And I noticed that with many churches, they just say Christ. There's a division there, and I challenge a clergy person of mine to use the words, the names, and see what a difference it is when you say Jesus as opposed to Christ. Christ puts it's an imminent reference. It puts the deity way out here, but Jesus pulls saying the name Jesus because Jesus is his name. Christos, or Christ, is his office. And so when you say Jesus, it's like Jesus is right here. Christ puts him out there. It gives you more room to kind of, you know, mess around with what Jesus said to do. So anyway, this guy, Richard Furman, says, he was in a writing statement, and he said, if holding slaves was evil, the apostles themselves would have said it. Instead, he claimed, these men who were ready to lay down their lives for the cause of their God would not have tolerated it. Surely, where both the master and servant were Christian, as in the case before us, they would have enforced the law of Christ and required that the master should liberate his slaves in the first instance. But instead of this, they let the relationship remain untouched as being lawful and right, and insist on the relative other duty. So they've been using the Bible to justify this racist, white supremacist stand. And they learn those lessons from their pastors and their Sunday school teachers. I remember reading Charles Marsh is an author right now. He's written a lot of really interesting, really, really good books. His father, though, was a pastor, and they lived in the South. And after the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in 1964-65 for voting rights, Charles Marsh said that his father was troubled by it. And when I was reading it, I'm thinking, oh, good. Okay, so maybe somebody white really gets it, right? So he said his father was really troubled by it. And he wrote this sermon called The Sorrow of Selma. And I looked for it. I couldn't find the whole sermon. I even wrote Charles Marsh and he didn't get back with me. But the excerpts that I found troubled me. And his thesis in that sermon was that he was not sure that God was happy with the Black people crossing that bridge and working to get their rights. He was not sure that God was in favor of Black people having civil rights in America. And he was a liberal. He was a liberal. So that's why I write this book, and I'm hoping I can get a fellowship or a grant or something to fund me so I can really get into it even more deeply, because I really believe that part of what I'm called to do is to write the stuff down. I write in a way that people can understand. So hopefully I can write something so people will read it and want to know more themselves. Because I really think that most people would be shocked by the things that are in our history. The people who are in power have worked very hard to keep things, their story, their narrative the way they want it. And they have said that, that's the truth, that the people are in power write the narrative. Well, that doesn't mean that the people who are not in power need to be quiet and accept it. We have brains, we can look, we can research, we can look for stuff. We need to find out what's going on so that when we are confronted with some of this crazy, hateful, dangerous, sickening rhetoric, we can have a foundation inside of us with which to fight it. If we don't know what the history is, then we become pawns or tools of those who oppress us. But if we know what's going on, oh my gosh, we are strengthened for this journey. We are strengthened for this journey, and that's my desire. So I hope that you'll get the book, and I hope that you'll read it, and maybe, when COVID is and restrictions are no longer the part of our real reality, we can really sit down and have a heart-to-heart talk. Let's take it. Let's underline it and star and make some questions in your own, so we can go through this. And you know what I think? This is the last thing I'll say. I always say to people, you never argue with people about their theology. I never do. Because we're not here to change anybody's minds. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to make sure we know the truth, because the truth sets us free. And we are here to share what we know, but we got to know what we're sharing. And we're here to share what has happened in history, because we don't know history. None of us. We don't know our history as women, as Native Americans, as Latinx. We don't know the story of the Alamo. We don't know any of that. So it is our job to know that. And for those who are not really into reading, those of us who are into reading and teaching, it's our job to maybe teach, but we don't have to change anybody's mind. We just got to give them the information, because once you know something, you can't unknow it. My hope is that in the workshops and stuff that I do, that I give people something to go home and chew on, that they, that wakes them up in the middle of the night and they have to think about it. That's what I want. I want us as Americans to stop walking around acting like, American exceptionalism exists and America is always like, no, let's just understand who we are. Own it. Own it. People talk about healing. You can't heal, and they talk about reconciliation. You can't even heal until you know the truth. And once you know the truth, then you can begin the reconciliation. If we don't do that, this nation, because the whole world now uses our racism against us in order to weaken us. And if we don't realize that, we are in big trouble. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I got to talk to Jane while I was doing treasurer registrar a while ago. And, but now I'm getting to see her in person again. She's a member of Mifflin Presbyterian Church, where she's serving as an elder, as a member of the church welcome team, as a member of her church's welcome team, formed under the Community Refugee Immigration Service. Jane and her husband are currently working together to resettle a refugee family. So I think that's very interesting. I'm excited to hear what Jane has to tell us.
Okay. I want to thank you today for asking me to share our experience at Mifflin Presbyterian Church in helping two families with a welcome team under Chris, the Community Refugee Immigration Service, located at 4645 Executive Drive, Columbus. That's their new address. They're just relocating this month. So they're not there open to start yet, but in the doing some remodeling, they're moving to that that address. Chris' mission is to help refugees and immigrants reach safety and stability, sustain self-sufficiency, and achieve successful integration into our Central Ohio community. A welcome team can be between 10 and 15 volunteers with a heart for helping the refugees resettle in our community for 90 days. Some volunteers continue to assist the families after the 90-day commitment. We collect household items, furniture, food, and clothing for the families when they arrive. Mifflin congregation is very generous in donations. We serve the families by taking them to doctor appointments, enrolling the children in schools, taking them grocery shopping, and teaching them English. We have found that it's important to be a friend to the families and listen to their needs, and being cognizant to not impose our culture on them. Chris provides a caseworker that is in contact with the family and helping them with IDs, medical cards, job opportunities, etc. Chris is also available for the families to contact for any obstacles that may occur. Our first family arrived December 4th, 2016. Do we have their picture, Karen? Oh, that's the second family. There we go. There we go. Our welcome team and members of the Chris staff greeted the Lundo family at the John Glenn Airport. The first thing, Saidi, the father, he's the guy there in the middle with the huge smile. The first thing Saidi said to us, "Now I do not need to worry about my family being killed." That broke our hearts as we looked at this precious family God had entrusted to us to assist them in America. Saidi Farazia is there to his left, or excuse me, to the right, with that little beige hat on, and their 5 children had been in a refugee camp in Tanzania for 20 years, and they spoke Swahili. When they arrived, to our surprise, Farazia was pregnant with little Gracie. Chris didn't know it. We didn't know there was another baby going to be coming along with them. I had the pleasure of being with Farazia in a delivery room when Gracie was born the following March 2017. Interesting enough, I'll just put this in, it wasn't really part of what I was going to share, but we were in the hospital for a whole day. She was in labor, and Saidi, his friend, brought him just there a little bit. Saidi was going to leave, and I said, "You are staying here." So the nurse, when we saw that Farazia had to have a cesarean, she asked Farazia who she wanted to go with her to the delivery room, and she chose me as Saidi was snoozing over on the sofa. But it was really a wonderful experience. And I'm sure some of you know their health care in these refugee camps are just, not really good. So Farazia did have some complications from previous birth, but she's all healthy. She's been all healthy. And I just wanted to share that bit with you because it was a fun day with me trying to explain to Saidi his responsibility. But anyhow, Saidi and Farazia are loving, hardworking parents for their family. We have found you build long-term relationships with the families. For instance, it has been 6 years thus far. That has provided us the opportunity to assist the family in getting green cards, a process that takes approximately 2 years. My husband, Rod, and I are advocates for the family. I was at their home this past Monday. Little Jen, she is, can't see her here. There's a little black there. She on my screen. I can't see her. She's 7 years old now. So she was just a baby herself when they came. In October, she'll be 7 in October, and she's in kindergarten this year. She said, Janie, are you my cousin? I said, no, but I will be if you want me to. I'm your very, very good friend. It was interesting because she was just playing on the floor, and then she asked me that question. We have found that friends in their country are referred to as their brothers, sisters, or cousins. It's so sweet because when they first came, they're like, oh, that's my brother, and that's, my sister. And we knew they really weren't related. The Mashibo family, I might be not pronouncing that correctly. It's a big last name. Could we have them, please, Karen? There we go. Our Mashibo family is our second family that arrived at John Glenn Airport August 18th, 2021. Some of our welcome team and Chris staff were there to greet the family. Unfortunately, our welcome team at the airport was slim because of COVID. When we went for the Lundo family, we had probably 15 to 20 people, but we, of course, we had to cut back. Netzi Mana, that's the papa. He's in that blue suit. Chantel, the mama, she is with the over behind Martin, the big guy there. He's 23. She's right behind him on his left side. They Netzi Mana, Chantel, and 6 children were very happy to have arrived in Columbus, Ohio for resettlement. As I said, the oldest, Martin, 23 years old, did speak a little English, which was very helpful. Their language is Kinyarwanda. I don't know if you've heard of it before. I never did, but it is their language. And they were from the Dominican Republic of Congo and Rwanda. Netzi Mana, this was just a few weeks ago. We don't ask them personal questions. We don't want them reliving what they have went through in their refugee camps. I was with them, and we took them to pick the 2 kindergarten and 3rd grader up at the bus stop. It was cold, cold winter day. We were sitting, waiting for the bus to come. And Netzi Mana, out of the blue, he was up front with me in the car. He shared with me that they went to Rwanda because of the killings in the DRC. The family was a little different because the children are older. Actually, his parents were killed in the Congo, and it was very, I don't know, I was just so touched when he said that to me. One of the teenagers has had some medical issues. It's Rapon. She's behind the little girl in the blue shirt there. She has the gray and black. She's 14. We as a team took her for 12 weeks for our doctor appointments at Nationwide Children's Hospital. Because of COVID, Chris worked with the family through Zoom and house visits. Normally, the family would have attended classes at the Chris facility to help them adjust to their new home and community. Netzi, Mana, and Martin have, in the past few weeks, secured jobs. To our surprise, Martin has friends in the Columbus area from Rwanda. The family is attending the African Pentecostal Church. The Lundo family, Saidi and his friend Essie, started a church in Essie's garage in Swahili language. They would like to be in a church or a building because they are growing in numbers. We at Mifflin were very fortunate that God chose these two Christian families for us to help in their resettlement. I would like to share with you some of the issues that were brought to our attention in helping the two families. We found the school systems in our area are not as equipped as they should be in helping our refugee and immigrants. That is why I am dedicated to be an advocate for these children. I want them to succeed in their education and look forward to what they will achieve in their adult life. I am just looking forward when the first one graduates from high school. For example, the school was called family several times and left a message. Well, guess what? Perhaps the message was left by someone speaking English. The families do not understand English. Volunteer activities would be wonderful in the school system, volunteer advocates. Another example, a caseworker from Chris shared with me that he took a young boy that just had come from Afghanistan to enroll in a school. The person at the school asked if he had paperwork from his previous school. The caseworker informed that person that this student had just run to get on an airplane when American troops were pulling out of Afghanistan. He had nothing. We saw how it was happening on the news. My point is that we need to think before we make assumptions that these families about these families and be sensitive to their needs. Nationwide Hospital has been wonderful in children's health care. I have one more example, then I will be happy. I have to take questions, but we'll put them as we were instructed to do. We noticed more with the Mashibo family that Chantel, she would buy so many potatoes. She would have them on the floor in a corner of her kitchen, rice and basic food items she would prepare for her family. It appears to us that they were hoarding, but this practice was necessary for their survival while they was in Rwanda to ensure that she had food for her family. Also, when they first arrived, she just gave the children just small portions, as she probably did in Rwanda. The refugee families are given a SNAP card for their food items with the amount based on how many are in your family. We have no idea what the families have experienced in the refugee camps. We need to reach out to show them the love of Christ and to pray that our refugee immigrant families will soon find justice and peace in America. Matthew 25, 35 to 40, where I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Shalom.
Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
And if I'll tell you what, if any of you would like to have more information, if you could send me an email, we can address your questions in the newsletter or through an email response to you, if that's okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jane. So if Beth Askew, who's been a member of our planning group, is going to introduce Barbara Marshall, who will talk about the anti-trafficking, human trafficking work that Covenant is involved in.
Yes, I'm Beth Askew from Covenant, and Susan's already said everything that needs to be said, but it is my great pleasure to introduce Barbara Marshall. She's a hero of mine. She is a member of Covenant, where she heads up the Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force, and she serves on the Commission for Mission and Social Concerns. So Barbara, if you will share the great work you're doing.
I'm sorry, I'm on my phone. Well, first of all, I have to give credit to Louise Davidson, who was really the one that was involved with the anti-human trafficking effort long before it came on to our radar at Covenant. And this was her national work with the church-wide coordinating team and with the UN Commission on the Status of Women. And she also, I believe, took a fact-finding trip to maybe Southeast Asia. Anyway, Louise was the inspiration for all of us. And she's the one that 12 years ago invited us to go with her to the second annual Human Trafficking Awareness Day. And that really it kicked us off to something really big. And by the way, the 13th annual Human Trafficking Awareness Day is next Friday, and you can sign up for that on Zoom. Well, it was at that first meeting that we heard from survivors of human trafficking, and we heard from law enforcement. We heard from different segments that were providing services, and we also learned more about a Franklin County municipal judge by the name of Paul Herbert, who in his court saw women who were there because they were victims of domestic violence. He also saw women who had been arrested for prostitution. And he immediately thought, you can't tell one group from the other. These are victims of domestic violence. These women who are arrested for prostitution, they are also victims. So he petitioned and was able to set up a special docket court for women who were arrested for prostitution. This would be a 2-year form of probation in lieu of going to jail or some other punishment. The court was named Catch Court, which stands for Changing Actions to Change Habits. The women who, when women are arrested for prostitution, they are visited by someone, a social worker from Catch Court, who explains what the court is all about and so forth. And if the woman chooses to petition Catch Court, she appears directly from jail in handcuffs in her jail uniform, stands before the judge, and Judge Herbert was always very gracious and kind and encouraging, saying things like, I have heard such good things about you. We welcome. He had a sign outside his courtroom that said, no shame zone. So the women were immediately in a welcoming, nurturing environment, but also a very stern environment where there were rules that had to be followed. It was a really hard 2 years. When a woman was arrested, she was assessed and assigned to a treatment center, a residential treatment center at various places around the county. On every Thursday, all the members of Catch Court, there are 40 of them now, report back to Catch Court, where they first of all, are treated to a very nice lunch. And Covenant has the privilege of serving lunch the first Thursday of every month. And you would think we were getting ready for a party because we assemble everything you could possibly want for lunch and far more than they can eat. Members of our church provide the food. We assemble it in our cars. We take it down to the parking lot adjoining the municipal court building. We load all the food in our little wagons. We haul them up the street into the building through security up the elevators, and we unfurl our colored plastic tablecloths and we set up our either pizza or very nice sandwiches, chips, vegetables, fruit, 40 bottles of water, which are pretty heavy, and homemade desserts. As the women come in, we have the opportunity to visit with them, and over 2 years, you sort of develop a relationship with women. We are efficient. At 1 o'clock. Everything is whatever's left is packaged up and is given to the women to have for a later meal, or as they've told us, they often take them and give them to homeless people along the way. So that's been our privilege to do that. At the end of this 2-year, while we were no longer, when they were not able to meet in the court, weather permitting, they would meet at Goodell Park. So we would perform the same service, but we would go to the park instead of the courthouse. So that has, and we have also been a catalyst in sharing our mission with another church who now provide lunch for the third Thursday of the month. In addition, we provide the annual Christmas luncheon at Covenant, where we, the women, have an opportunity to get together and have fun and chat. And we prepare our signature dish, and at the end, they are given gift bags for the women and gift bags for the children. And this is as a result of the adoptive family, which we participate in, as well as others throughout the community. At the end of the 2 years, women who have successfully completed the program have a graduation, which is a very nice affair that takes place at either the State House or it's been at the Governor's Mansion. And a number of our church members have attended that. Since that, Judge Herbert retired last year after 10 years of developing this court, which has been replicated in Cincinnati, Dayton, and Cleveland, as well as other states. It's now been taken over by Judge Jody Thomas, who is equally compassionate and qualified. She began as a social worker, so she knows what's going on. Catch Court is really sort of the first step for women coming out of human trafficking. Catch Court could not exist without Freedom a la carte, which is started as a food cart that was run by survivors of human trafficking. It went on to develop a very successful catering business. And many of us have delivered those catered meals. And it now, as of last year, has a freestanding restaurant called Freedom Cafe. So Freedom a la carte supervises and handles the volunteers for Catch Court, and they provide support for the women who are victims of human trafficking. They provide workforce development because the women they learn skills and business things by working at Freedom a la carte. They also provide they help in providing housing, education, expunging records, and license reinstatements. A further part of this after Catch Court and Freedom a la carte are the butterflies. These are women who have gone through Catch Court, the programs of freedom, and they are ready to fly, but they still need that feeling of support and community. And so Freedom a la carte provides that. And this is where we come in with all of these women. And I'd like to just tell you some of the things that we do, because we do it for every level of this sisterhood. We have provided and continue to provide Kroger gift cards for the women. The women at every level have a number of outings throughout the year to foster that feeling of community and family. So we have provided food and volunteers for spring outings, the 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas. We pack Thanksgiving baskets. We provided the Catch logo T-shirts that the women are given the day they enter Catch Court. It features their logo. Some are pink and some are black. So we were thrilled to do that. We also were alerted to the fact that women sort of have that in-between period, when it's too cool to wear a summer things, summer t-shirt, but you're not ready for a winter coat. So our dear Louise Davidson went online and I think purchased every hoodie and legging in every possible size from Amazon and every other organization. Catch Freedom maintains a resource room where it's like a big storeroom where everything that women might possibly need are available for women just simply by filling out a form for what they need. So that's where the hoodies and leggings were stored. And I think they're probably all gone by now. We had a drive at Covenant to get feminine products for our for people who need them, like for our food pantry. We had so many that Beth said, "Do you suppose Freedom could use these?" And they were just overjoyed to have those available for the women. I spoke to my dentist and told him about Catch Court, and I said, what would you think about giving us a few toothbrushes and toothpaste? And so he said, let me work on that. So the next week I picked up this huge crate, probably full of all kinds of dental products and took those down.
Barbara, I'm sorry. I guess you didn't see my chat to you.
No.
Your time is up. Yeah.
Okay. All right, then shall I stop?
Well, if you want to say one more thing, I'm sorry, but.
Okay, we do many more things. I would be happy to answer questions. And we continue to expand things. We have book clubs, parenting classes, and mentor orientation classes, which has been at Covenant. And we also write notes to women in jail and provide toiletry bags as they leave jail with nothing but the clothes they wore in. So I'm happy to share this mission, and it's something we feel passionate about. Thank you.
Okay, it is my honor and privilege to introduce our next speaker, even though she doesn't really need an introduction, as she has been an inspiration and a mentor to many of us. Ann B. Walker is active in PW and a former moderator of PWPSV, recently chaired the search committee for PW in the Synod of the Covenant. Ann is a member of Bethany Presbyterian Church, where she has been involved in the Saturday lunch program for the past 16 years. And I'm so looking forward to hearing more about it. Ann?
Okay. In the late 90s, early 2000, I was serving on the committee of a housing for the homeless. And I was shocked to find out that there were very few services being offered to the homeless and the poor around Bethany. So I decided that it was important that we at least provide food. Talking to the elders, talking to members of Presbyterian Women, we decided that we would do a soup and sandwich. And we tried that. And what we found out that they were eating so much soup and so many sandwiches that we really needed a full meal. So we moved in from soup and sandwiches to a full meal. And we provided that for the homeless and the hungry. And I say that because there were a number of people who lived by themselves, who were lonely, or who ate at McDonald's, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they needed a full meal, and so we invited them to come to Bethany. We asked that, we're not in the church budget, so we began to work with the Mid-Ohio Food Bank. We asked that people to volunteer to prepare the meal and to serve the meal, and of course to do cleanup. As a result of that, we have a cadre of volunteers who come on a regular basis. When people say to me, well, Ann, what can I do? And I tell them often that this is what I consider a local mission. And when they ask me what they can do, I said, well, you can write a check, you can volunteer, or you can do both. And we actually do have some volunteers who do both. We serve approximately 100 people per week. We have a professionally trained chef who helps provide the food or prepares the food. And I say helps because I sometimes help him since he is my youngest son. We have donations. So as a result, oh, here is our professional chef now. Did you have something you wanted to say about our lunch program that?
Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, whichever. Yes, we've been doing about 16 years straight, rain or shine. We end up with a lot of, what I want to say, returning people, clients that come each week. And lately we've been a bunch of new ones. And we're happy doing a good job for the community. And they love us and we love them. Mother?
Thank you so very much, son. Okay. As I said, we serve approximately 100 people a week, each week. And Iola?
Well, my name is Iola Dunbar, and I'm treasurer here at Bethany for the women's group. And we call ourselves the Bethany Presbyterian Women. And as Ann was saying, Mrs. Walker was saying, we have been doing this for 16 years and have never missed a Saturday serving all who come. They come, the homeless, the lonely, the ones that live by themselves. They have no family or friends. And we should be getting started here at 11:30, and the luncheon goes on until 1, or if they want to sit around and talk for a while after they eat, if they want to have seconds, they can have that. And I see some nice desserts over there. I think I'll get one of those. So I got a little hungry here listening to the talks this morning, which I've enjoyed very much. And so back to Ann.
Okay. We also found out when it was very cold, 15 degrees above zero, and we had a client that didn't have socks on. So we asked a person if you would give us some socks, and they said yes. We also found out that we had a nurse in our membership who was willing to come down on a Saturday and do a blood pressure drawing as well as the blood prick for diabetes. So we try to provide that once a year. Then we have a librarian friend who was willing to come read to the children that come, as well as provide books. And it's exciting to see the expression on children's faces when they say, is this book really mine? Can I keep it? Because it's their first book. So this has been what we consider a very successful program, a very necessary program. And as Iowa said, we have not missed a day. We have a young man who used to come as a family. And then when he was 14, he said, may I become a volunteer? Today, he's 28 years old and he still volunteers. So we are blessed in being able to provide this kind of service to those who live. And remember I said that they lived around Bethany? We actually have several families that have to transfer by bus at least twice just to get here on Saturday for our lunch program. So those of you who are looking for a local mission, give me a call.
Thank you, Anne.